Hello and welcome to the Newsroom with Sana. Today we're going to take a look at different stories around the world, especially the major events that have happened for Pakistan in the year 2025. As we observe the last day of the year, it's been mixed with a lot of aspirations, of course, of multiple countries and a lot of conflicts in the international community as well. But Pakistan has come up strong with the foreign policy successes that it has achieved in 2025. And these range, of course, from a lot of major interactions on international platforms, important multilateral and bilateral engagements and collaborations, and high-level exchanges. And these are, of course, just a few aspects of what the foreign policy stance of Pakistan has been and the kind of geopolitical shift that we have seen in this year alone. And so that's going to be our focus in the first segment, where we're going to take a recap of these events, see what all has contributed to this success and how exactly will Pakistan be able to sustain it, and then what is going to be the larger role that Pakistan will have in the next year and the years to come. In our second story, we're going to take a look at what is happening in Afghanistan. The ban on girls' education continues for the fourth consecutive year. And of course, this is very, very unfortunate and completely not in line with what the Afghan Taliban regime earlier promised. There was, of course, a lot of aspects of conditions that were required to be met as per claims made by the Afghan Taliban regime. But as the years go on, we see that the ban seems more permanent than ever, with alternative measures taken by the Afghan Taliban regime of madrasas, through which we see that many girls are being educated, not just in terms of what is described as traditional school education, but also in terms of Islamic teachings. And many argue that that is not the only case or the reality of these institutions. What is being done, in fact, is the furthering of the political and ideological agenda of the Taliban regime, with no real focus on education or other subjects that the boys in the country have access to. So we're going to take a look at that in our second story. Our third one is going to also focus on what is happening in Bangladesh, with, of course, the very important state funeral of the three-time former Prime Minister and the only female Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Khalida Zia, who has died at the age of 80 and has been laid to rest in the country. The National Assembly Speaker of Pakistan was also in attendance in this funeral. And this, of course, also points towards the larger situation in Bangladesh with regards to not just looking back at the years of Ms. Khalida Zia and what she's contributed politically to Bangladesh, but also moving forward, what her party or others can actually achieve given the precarious situation at the moment and what is likely going to transpire in the elections that are scheduled to be held in February next year. So that's going to be our focus in the last segment of the show today. We're going to start off with a look back at Pakistan's foreign policy successes and what that means for the country and how exactly are they going to be continuing in the next year and onwards. For that, we've been joined by Dr. Imran Ali, who's a former ambassador, and we've also been joined by Professor Dr. Auqaab Malik, who's a foreign affairs expert. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the show today, and I'd love to take your perspective on this matter. Ambassador Imran, I'll start with you in terms of how you're seeing what has been some of the major milestones that Pakistan has achieved in this year alone. There have been a lot of successes for Pakistan, but where do you see the changing point or turning point for Pakistan in terms of its geopolitical position and its foreign policy stronghold?
Thank you, Sana. I think it started with May, and there were three things that happened in May. One, Pakistan's stance on Pahalgam was proved correct, as India had no proof. Number two, Pakistan gave a very resounding response to what India threw at us, with most countries thinking that we scored a victory. And number three, that we came out after the May conflict as the truthful party, because whereas everybody knew that the whole US administration, its national security branch, was talking to both the countries, Pakistan was upfront about it, and it acknowledged the US role in it, President Trump's role in it, whereas India, to put a lie to its foreign policy, it kept quiet. And in fact, it said that the US had not interceded when there were clear records of the meeting. So things changed. Pakistan's credibility, Pakistan's military resilience to a neighbor which called itself five times larger and its economy 10 times more than us, its defense budget 5 times more than us. We gave a very good response. So things started changing in reality from May onwards, and these three factors contributed to Pakistan's resurgence to the world stage.
Right. Professor Malik, I'd like your take on this too. Where do you think that Pakistan has been able to gain the most in terms of its foreign policy advances?
There. Could you repeat that again?
My question is, where do you think Pakistan has gained the most in its foreign policy advances? Where has been our most successful moment?
I think it's not just a moment. I think it's been a slow and gradual progressive increase in our capacity to enhance our image, more importantly than not, because of the negativity associated with Pakistan over the past decade or two, propagated by India and Israel and large sections of the Western populations. They've been, for a long time, pushing Pakistan down. And I think this year has shown them that we're not what you think we are. And I think it's also for the fact that, especially over the last 2 years or so, and what's happening in Palestine, and the idea of the moral high ground that the West has collapsed. I think Pakistan has also established itself there, indicating that, you know, like many countries from the global South, that we are not to blame for your propaganda and what negative imagery you've portrayed us as. And I think we've uplifted ourselves in that respect. And the war in May, and a resounding victory that we had, I think that really pushed us forward. I think that was just one of those things, but it was a progressive move forward. And we capitalized on that. And I think there was a change of feeling towards Pakistan in the West also, recognizing that whatever they put into India hasn't really come to fruition, that it's actually a house of cards, that it's collapsing very easily. And the trillions they're going to put into India may not be worthwhile anymore. And they want to look at another balancer within at least South Asia. And if we can utilize that for our benefit, I think that's very important that we do so. So as a result of that, we've been increasing. Our economy has improved. That is inviting further future investment in the country. And that's going to be productive in the sense that that induces more investment or more interest in Pakistan as we accelerate our propagation of this, or should I say, marketing of our resources. The more that we find out, I think that's going to increase over the next year for sure. And that will have dividends in the long-term future, because we still have to be very careful and not become complacent and that this is the end of it. Also for India, we have to recognize that they lost this one, but that does not mean that they're not going to prepare for the next one, whenever that might be. And we have to be very wary about how we conduct ourselves in that respect. We cannot become complacent at all. This is just one of the battles in a very long conflict that we've had with India, for example.
Right, absolutely. Ambassador Imran, what do you think in terms of the shift that we have seen in Pakistan's relationship in particular with the United States? Because we've also seen that there's been a lot that Mr. Trump has said and done with reference to Pakistan and its relationship with the United States. He has praised both the civil and military leadership multiple times. And we also see a shift in Washington's India First policy that used to be there before. Where do you think is the current situation between Pakistan and the United States in terms of what can possibly be achieved moving forward?
I think in the short to medium term, I think Pakistan has improved its position with the US manifold, and India's position with the US has declined. And I think one of the primary reasons was the coherence in the civil, military, foreign security policy as far as Pakistan was concerned, and especially military diplomacy. As far as the US is concerned, there should be no doubt that that Pakistan's chief of army staff had a key role to play in assuaging US concerns about Pakistan, in telling President Trump that Pakistan could also play a role in Iran, and also advising the Americans that any disintegration or any regime change in Iran would be a foolhardy exercise and they should refrain from it. So, with the US, this has been a new window, uh, a very good window after a long time. And I think in the short to medium term, if we capitalize on it, I think Pakistan and the US can even come closer. On Pakistan's advice or on Pakistan's counsel, or as a result of negotiations with Pakistan, the US also realized that this totally anti China stance is not correct. They have mellowed it down, and now we are talking of two firsts, or a first and a second in the world, and they're talking to each other. So I see positivity, at least in the medium term, short to medium term, with the US. And as the other worthy guest just said, we cannot be complacent about any aspect of foreign and security policy. We need to know that this is a finely tread line, and Pakistan would have a very tough task in balancing out China and the US, our relationship with the US and China. But I'm sure we are capable of it.
Right. Professor Malik, there is, of course, a lot that is happening in the region also, especially with regards to the developments that have taken place in Gaza and the Middle East. We saw that the Arab countries also got together, and there were a lot of developments on that front. Most notably for Pakistan was the defense pact with Saudi Arabia. That's, of course, not limited in terms of the context. It is also the larger relationship that Pakistan has with Saudi Arabia. But building on this key pact and the ways in which this holds true for our relationship with Saudi Arabia, how can this be expanded further with other regional countries and Pakistan's presence or increased presence in the Middle East?
I think that we have to be careful. We have to be incremental in our relations with others. We can't jump into something that we may find will cause problems for us in the future. So we have to be calculating. When we establish relations with other countries who want to join this pact, for example, and make it a wider strategic alliance with more number of countries, I think that is a possibility, and it's something that other countries might find be alert to. But I think it's in Pakistan's interest in this respect, and building that commonality, that security interest, and linking in, by the way, an economic interest within this, more economic interdependence in that respect. As we find our reserves, our hydrocarbon reserves, for example, the expertise that we require from the Middle East, but we have to make sure that we are licensing out to build our own capacity for the future. It's very important that we do that. And in our rare earth minerals, not just leaving it to one or two countries, but we need to make sure that we diversify in this respect. And our linkages with Turkey, for example, is very, very important. I think that's going to be having a very positive impact on Pakistan in the forthcoming future. And it's a mutual relationship. But I also think we need to look towards Central Asia and our linkages there. We need to establish much stronger linkages, find alternative pathways. We know that Iran is next door and there are sanctions. Iran is being sanctioned, and that plays a large part in how we behave towards them, unfortunately. But I think that we need to look at the future, that future relationship as well. Unfortunately, our next door neighbor in the West has turned against us. There's been a very severe betrayal from them. And we need to resolve this, because the long-term future is we can't run away from Afghanistan. There's no choice but to establish a positive working relationship, if not something more friendly. So we need to really try to dig in there and find allies within the Afghan government or the Afghan regime as it is, and try to figure a way out. I think it's very important that we do that. Otherwise, we may have a second enemy on our Western front collaborating with the enemy on our Eastern front, which will be a disaster for Pakistan. I think we have much, much more commonality with Afghanistan than India has. We can't let the Mandela principle take effect, where my enemy's enemy is my friend, for example, as far as India is concerned. We have to make sure that our friendship with Afghanistan is long-lived, and we have to re-establish that. But it's not all about the stick, you see. We have to incentivize that. And the same comes with incentivizing the relationships with the Middle East and Central Asia with Afghanistan. I think that's very important to build that capacity of showing that this is much more important, the relationships with other countries in its neighborhood, than they are with India, so they don't undermine us in many ways that they can. And I think that's the future we need to look towards, building greater capacity within the region, the Middle East, and looking at how we can work together.
Right, Ambassador Imran, there's also, of course, the very important economic front, and we've had great engagements with a lot of these countries in the neighborhood, in the larger region as well, and that's integral for Pakistan and the economic trajectory that it's currently on. With countries like China and others such as Russia that are expanding, particularly in terms of our collaborations on the energy sector, how do you see that Pakistan can capitalize further on this stance, given its current economic position, and build upon these very important strategic partnerships?
Sana, thank you. The economy, uh, unfortunately, with the external elements, it has a very strong internal element as well. So whereas we are doing very well externally, and internally too, we have stabilized a rather precarious situation. We've done well in that. But now I think the challenge would be to use foreign policy to ameliorate the current status of the downtrodden in Pakistan. We need to go after poverty alleviation and those things. The high tech, the high sounding projects are very good, but now it has to translate into benefits for the common man. And I think poverty safety nets, with the help of our friends, our new allies, our enhanced allies, it has to be done. As far as your question regarding energy was concerned, I think we have incrementally moved as far as Russia is concerned. And with Russia, we have reached that stage, whereas Russia still probably has India as its partner number one, but it doesn't want to annoy Pakistan on anything. And this has also been helped by our relationship with China, because Russia and China have come closer. Uh, we uh, we must also look at when we look at the world. Remember, we must look at hydro water reserves. It's very vital not to neglect water storage reserves, dams, small dams, large dams, because whatever else happens, we might have humbled India, but it's the upper riparian and we are the lower riparian, and you should expect anything in the long run from your future adversary. So whereas sometimes sometimes we miss out on dams. We miss out on dams and water reservoirs. We must complete the current two, and we must push forward all provinces and the federation to build dams so that we can mitigate any future Indus water related tensions in the region.
Right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Imran, for joining us and being a part of the newsroom. Professor Malik, last question from you with reference to our economic developments and the steps in terms of what the country has done in its engagements with other countries is very, very integral. But what's also important is our relationship with the international financial institutions, most notably the IMF. And that has also picked up in terms of what Pakistan has achieved, the kind of trust deficit that existed earlier, and the kind of reviews that we're getting now point towards that positive development. But what more is needed in terms of what we hear back from these institutions in terms of what Pakistan can do at home to build that further and to continue on this trajectory and eventually move to a situation where we no longer need them?
I think what we're working on the right direction. We're working towards becoming more self-sustainable to a large extent. The latest tranche of 1.2 billion was an important um, um, milestone in a way that it provided a little extra for us, a breathing space in our foreign reserve. But we can't rely on this. I think in the future we have to become self-reliant in many ways, but that's going to take time. We need to look to alternative sources with in such a way that allows us to restructure at a certain pace that doesn't cause instability within the country. Now, there's a cost of living crisis in this country, as there are in many other countries, and the burden, unfortunately, is being placed on the civilians and the lower. I hate to call it downtrodden, but the fact is the poorer people, they suffer a lot more. And I think the people in the upper hierarchy, in the echelons and governance, and the rich, in essence, are really not aware or inconsiderate of the plight of the people on the ground. I think more grassroots enterprises, more grassroots initiative are necessary. And we need to build and flower this up and inspire the people to do something for themselves as well, but allow them to do it without restrictions. So we need to engage them more so they can start building themselves up. It's not just a top-down strategy that we use. We build the infrastructure, we provide all these other resources as we can, and it's very difficult at this moment in time, but we have to build it from the bottom up. And I think people will be more appreciative of that and these initiatives if we allow this and we facilitate grassroots movements to come into fruition and grow and flourish, because that's building communities within the country. And building communities at the end of the day is what is a building block of this country. It's not the external countries that are building blocks of Pakistan. The building blocks and the foundation of this country are its people, and especially the unfortunate people that are poorer, who provide all the services they can and who can barely survive. And we need to consider this, rather than hiking taxes and hiking prices, hiking this and the other to satisfy external agencies for their control on our economy. We need to look at our own people as well. We need to have a balanced view towards things. And if it's a case that people would say that we are trying to encourage, but we need to implement the restructuring, that's fine. But then that means restructuring for everybody at all levels, including the people who are the elite and the rich. And they need to put their part in as well, to a similar extent, I think, as the people are in the lower levels of this country, unfortunately.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Malik, for joining us and being a part of the newsroom. These takes are important, of course, in terms of understanding where is it that Pakistan has succeeded in this year and where is it that Pakistan can continue to work on, to develop on these successes and to further capitalize on what we have achieved and what the leadership has achieved during this year. It's important, of course, to see the difference that it has made, not just in terms of our foreign policy stances, but also in terms of our political and economic gains.